Well, hello. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Ghost Education 101. I'm excited to have everyone here and my amazing guests. I'm sorry, but Chelsea was unable to join us tonight because she's having internet issues while she's traveling. But we will have her on a future show so you can learn more about what she does. But I wanted to welcome my guests first before we start talking about our topic today. I have Larry, Robert, and Chris joining us. Can you guys take a moment to introduce yourselves and let everybody know exactly who you are and what you do?
I'll start. Larry Lawson. I'm the director of the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation and the owner of Indian River Hauntings down in Vero Beach, Florida.
My name is Robert Murphy. I'm the founder of Elite Paranormal Society. And basically, my forte is more so dealing with negative locations as far as for residential. Chris?
My name is Chris McKinnell. I'm the director of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. We carry on the work of my grandparents, Ed and Lorraine Warren, all over the world.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. And tonight's an interesting topic that gets heavily debated. You can see it in all of the paranormal groups. Everybody's arguing over what's right and what's wrong. But what exactly is the difference between paranormal research and paranormal tourism? And we can even throw in urban exploration into that mix. So I wanted to ask my panelists today, what is your definition of paranormal research?
I'll go.
Larry?
Paranormal research, a subject very near and dear to my heart. Paranormal research is the study of what's out there that we have not yet identified, what's there in the spirit world. And it's researching to find out what really the answers are and how to get there, how to collect, how to preserve, how to examine evidence properly in an attempt to find out what the answer is, what the phenomenon is.
Yeah, and having a number of people looking at it in different perspectives is what really this field is, I guess that's really what opens up this field, is that we have a number of different beliefs, belief systems, ideology. And so that is actually beneficial as long as we can, at some point or another, bring it to the table and, work it through.
For me, there's research, which is fine. And I think Larry summed it up perfectly. But intention is really important for me. If you're going in there just to collect the data, there are doctors who examine diseases, and they're not there trying to cure a particular patient, but they are trying to cure people. They're trying to help a greater number of people. And if you're going into this with that understanding and that mindset, if your intention is still to help people, then I'm all for it. But I have a certain huge problem with these groups that want to go in, stir up things so they can get their evidence, but they don't do anything to help the family when they leave. That's my issue.
And I call those paranormal thrill seekers. That's a term I use for them. They're weekend warriors, and far be it from me to criticize or because everybody does it for different reasons. But Chris, I agree with you completely. If your intention has got to be to find out what it is for the good of the order, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, there's definitely, you have those that are, like you say, thrill seekers, more into it for the entertainment. You've got those that are just going in it to document, maybe, and that was originally what we used to get, was calls that, somebody wanted to make sure they weren't losing their mind. They really thought they had something going on. Could we debunk it, come up with actual explanations, or was there really something happening? And then it got to a point where the teams were going in, the people really needed help. And to Chris's point, people would go in, stir it up, even aggravate it, and then just bolt on the clients. And the clients are left not knowing where to go, who to turn to.
And that's where the integrity of what we do comes into play also. A lot of folks, and sometimes not even with the wrong intentions, would go in and, as you said, Chris, stir it all up, but they really don't know what they're doing or what they're dealing with or how to fix it. And poof, they're gone, leaving these poor folks, the clients, holding the bag, not knowing what to do. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think I hear at least every other day a family or a person contacting me or us saying, Well, we had another team in here, but they said it's more than they can handle, and then they ran away. I am so sick of that. Don't be a thrill seeker. If you're going to practice medicine, learn about medicine. Don't pick up a scalpel and start surgery without knowing what the hell you're doing.
But therein comes the problem. How many teams out there really are experienced or knowledgeable enough, and how do they become knowledgeable enough? And my team's been around for a good 10, 12 years. I know you guys have been around that length of time. It takes time to build up, I won't even say expertise, but let's say enough knowledge to understand what we're dealing with and how to actually help folks. And a lot of teams, they're out there for a year or two. They do a couple of investigations and poof, they're gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that brings up go ahead, Robert.
No, I was just going to agreeing with that by far. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems we have out there, more so because you got the parrot effect. Everybody's just repeating what they've heard. It's like you watch all these teams that come out. If you watch the majority of them, they're going to do it like the original shows that were on TV, which you have an entertainment side to it, and you have obviously reality of what happens. Some of us have been in the field and we've seen things that obviously I can't blame people for not understanding or believing some of the things that we have witnessed. It's one of those, but you have to get it. Unfortunately, there's more and more teams, and hopefully more will get on the bandwagon and start networking with those that do have the ability or have already learned it and try to learn their way with it as well.
And the entire function of the foundation is helping teams get the experience they need in a safe environment so that they're working with people who understand what they're doing. None of us are experts.
Amen. Amen.
Enough to say they are has only proven how ignorant they truly are. I've done this over 40 years, and I promise you all I can come up with are great questions and very few answers.
Yeah, that's because the TV shows label all of us as experts. Instead of just saying paranormal researcher, the name that flashes on the screen is paranormal expert.
Yeah.
Yep.
Chris is right. There are no experts. Heck, we don't even really know what the phenomenon is yet. We have not come up with a definitive answer to any of this yet. So how can there be an expert?
We just had this conversation. How do we know that the phenomena that we are experiencing is caused by spirit and not by our own manifestations? How do we know that any of it is spirit and not our own manifestations? How does a psychic know what they're picking up on is anything other than information? How do they know that they're actually speaking to spirit? Yeah, they feel it, but how do they know?
Right.
Well, don't you guys feel that sometimes these folks, their intentions are good, they just maybe believe their own press too much, or they get too involved and they lose their sense of reality? Maybe they don't mean harm, but they cause harm. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, regardless, I mean, we've seen them. Most of us have met them, even though those that are on TV and whatnot. They just, the chances until you start experiencing it for yourself, I don't doubt there's people that are extremely gifted out there. I know I have one on my team that I'm fortunate enough to have. Nobody that's going to blow her own whistle or anything like that. It's just watching it over and over and over. And it's going outside the normal box. It's not like somebody's sitting in front of them. It's not something you can get off social media. Trying to get information that can be several states away, could be on the other side of the globe. And when those type of people can actually get detailed information, not general. I mean, who has not lost a loved one? Hey, I feel like you've lost somebody or you're going through some hard times. Well, guess what? Most of us do. But when they can give you names, they can tell you things about a location before you're getting to that location, what it's involving, descriptive details, that's important. But
I'm a psychic, and my grandmother was honestly one of the greatest psychics ever, I think. I mean, she could do things that made the X-Men look like, But I don't trust a psychic. I don't trust me without evidence. And I would caution anybody, do not change your life because somebody said, oh, I feel you have a Lilith spirit around you. I use that one a lot because that actually happened. And it's that kind of stupidity that thoughtless sharing of your feelings as a psychic that can cause so much harm to others. And they have to be careful about what they say, because they are respected more by people who believe in the phenomenon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a gentleman on my team. He's actually in County Durham, England, and he joins us via Skype. And I'm a retired cop. Psychics were a really tough sell for me for many, many years. But Chris Huff's his name, and I wish I had time to go into the things that he's been able to provide that are just phenomenal. But the thing with him is he's very humble. He does not. He says if you got a psychic that's charging money, don't believe him. And he is very anti. Look at me. Look at me. Oh, look at me. I'm the psychic and I can see. It's so opposite that it's not funny. And you combine that with the things that he has come up with, phenomenal. Yet I've had other psychics that I won't even say that their intentions were bad, but look at me, look at me, look at me. It's how they ran their shows. And that's, in my opinion, where you have to worry a lot.
Yeah. Oh, we have a big problem with ego in the foundation.
Yeah.
That's a major thing. The thing is, even the best psychic in the world isn't right all the time.
Yep.
You need evidence.
Yep.
It's like dealing with clients. I mean, you can't sit there and go to a client and say, well, my psychic said, you need to have something that's going to back it up. But a lot of people want to do that. They just want to go. Now, if we're on an investigation, I try to do quite a few of mine live. And if Janie says, hey, Rob, there's a little girl right there, and I'll role play instantly to that. I can't see the little girl. I mean, to me, I'm not really picking up on it, obviously. So, but I'll still try to engage the little girl. Quite often we go back and we catch an EVP of this little girl talking to us. Mm-hmm. So to me, that's the credibility that goes back to it. I can take that to a client because the client's usually there with us. They're watching it. They know there's no children there. Then you have this little child sitting there talking. It's something I can take too. It's not, okay, the psychic said, but here's the voice we caught.
And historical research along with that is so vital. And so many groups don't take the time. And when I'm not talking about events that have happened there, paranormal events that have happened, I'm talking about the true historical research. Who built the house? Who lived there beforehand? How many people have been there? That type of research can prove valuable when you get an EVP, and too many groups don't spend enough, in my opinion, time with that.
Too many groups just research who died there.
Right.
Is all they want to know.
What's important is who lived there. It doesn't matter where you die. It matters where you want to be after you're dead, where you're most comfortable or maybe traumatized or whatever, where you're stuck or where you want to escape to. It has nothing to do with where you die. It can.
Agreed. Well, yeah, 100% right on that. I agree.
And for a client, the one question I do have is if a client's trying to find what so many paranormal teams out there that cause trouble or, whether intentional or not intentional, how does a client know what team to go to with so many teams out there?
They need to do their research too.
And vet who they have coming in. Find out what they're about, what their philosophies are, what their backgrounds are before they let them into their house. I mean, there's I don't know if you guys agree. I would think that most groups that start up probably aren't doing it with nefarious intent.
No.
Right.
But they don't really understand what they're doing. And I think it's incumbent upon the client, if they're going to have them come into their home, they need to check out who they've got coming in and find out what their credentials are.
And what they're capable of. I mean, what is the client actually, what's the end goal for the client? Yeah. What is the client really looking for? Not all of them are looking to get rid of something. Mm-hmm. Some of them just want to know. It's the unknown that scares the majority of the people. Just they don't know. And then you get these people, if they go on a group, obviously you got half the people are planting the seed. Oh, it's a demon, run, get out, sell your house, burn it, whatever, call a priest. It just goes nuts. It's like instead of slowing it down and going, whoa, hold on.
Well, and here's an issue with me. Group goes in and the client wants this, whatever this entity is, to leave. Well, let's just say. So this group comes in, they say, yes, we find this old man from the 1880s is in your house, and we'll sage the house and we'll tell him to cross to the other side. When the group really has no credentials to do that. And they say, we'll clear your house. Now, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But what happens if the entity comes back? Or what happens if the client perceives the entity comes back and the group says, we got rid of him, but something's coming back? And this has always been a big fear of mine. A client becomes so emotionally distraught over the fact that this thing has come back and it won't go. Maybe it'll put them over the edge. You see where I'm going with this?
It has
And
happened.
yeah, it has happened. And not only is that unfair to the client, but let's face it, also becomes a liability issue that teams need to think about before they start saying, I can do something when they really can't, or they don't really know that they can't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not only setting the expectations, but to your point is, you have to, you're not treating just, if you're treating a location, it truly does have some type of if it has some type of negative activity, you're also treating the client, which is definitely takes time. So as, what's like, Chris, for yourself, when do you guys follow up? How often do you follow up after you go to a location, you actually work it, so you cleanse it, whatever you're doing? When do you follow up? Because a lot of teams, they don't ever follow up again. They're done. They're gone. They got their chance to investigate and they're gone.
Now, we make sure that the client is okay or unfortunately not cooperating and we're not able to help them. That does happen.
It does.
And then our researchers will check in on them, but not often. For us, it's more about, and this comes, I think, probably top down from me. If you want our help, we're here for you. And we will be here for you anytime you reach out. And it's free and it's anonymous. But I also don't want to keep revisiting because I used to do that. I remember one experience, everything had been fine for 2 years. And they invited me to spend the night there. And I was there with my cousin. And so the 10-year-old boy gave up his bed, not happy about it. And after 2 years of completely nothing going on in that house, in the middle of the night, the bed picks up, flies across the room, smashes down, and breaks into pieces with me and my cousin on it. Because the kid was so pissed off that we had taken his bed. So maybe checking in, as long as they know they can come to you, as long as they know everything's fine, and you check a couple of times over about a month or two, I'm okay with that. If they want help afterward, I have plenty of people who come back to me later because they're worried that something's manifesting again. Often that's because a person is psychic and they don't understand their abilities, and they're basically a bright light in the darkness for these spirits, and they attract them. And so they're not truly haunted. They're just a lighthouse, and these spirits come and go, and it feels like you're haunted for your entire life.
And really, when somebody, if you have a team member that can cross somebody over, do you guys think that entity is truly always gone, or can it come back?
Yeah, it's free will.
That's exactly my point too.
Yeah.
You can get rid of them today, but that's not going to stop them from coming back tomorrow, and that gets forgotten a lot also, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like for me, I turn around, I'm checking back, which I talk to the clients, and the one thing they're going to know is, they want to know they're not alone, obviously. I won't chase a client down, to Chris's point. I'm not going to force my help on them. If they're not going to follow the instructions that I'm giving, my advice or whatever, or they have 10 different people involved, more power to them. I just kindly back away, not a problem. But if I go there to do a cleansing, 24 hours, within 1 to 2 days, I'm checking up on them just to follow up, which I let them know ahead of time. Hey, tomorrow I'll be checking up on you, just so I'm not, you're not alone, because everybody's worried about you coming in there, stirring it up, leaving them. They got to deal with it. And then I have, basically it's a 2-week process. I mean, and this is just what works for me. I know the mentality is, again, education. If they invite something back in, once everything's calm, nothing's happened for months. So now somebody decides they're going to practice magic or they're going to go ahead and do a spirit box session. They're on their own at that point.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I agree.
Actually,
Chris, Stephanie asked a quick question. If spirits have free will, do they have to listen to your requests and not follow you home from an investigation?
That's a philosophical question.
Well, every tradition, every religion that I've studied, every magical path I've studied, they do set up psychic boundaries. They make it very clear what is and is not acceptable. And the spirits have to conform to those boundaries that you set. Having said that, in my personal experience, human spirits have free will. And they don't have to pass over if they don't want to. For me, when I pass over someone, it's a therapy session. Now, that may be simply because I'm a therapist and that's what I do. For others, it may be different. I have no idea how other people, all right, I know a few people and how they do it. But yeah, no, I believe that it doesn't matter whether you have a body or you don't have a body. You're still a human being, and you still have free will. And they don't have to listen to you. If they want to work with you, they will listen to you, and that's the difference.
I've got a little different thought on that, and it's a philosophical thing only. And I've got no empirical proof that that it works or doesn't. But I truly believe that you do have dominion over your home and you as an entity. And unless you give some sort of tacit permission, you're going to be safe. We personally practice when we finish up an investigation. My team and I say a little prayer and say, you do not have permission to come home with us. You may not follow us. You must stay here and you cannot follow us. Now, to that end, we have not ever had, I shouldn't probably say this, but we haven't had problems yet. And I realize that's just my opinion or my belief. I do agree with Chris. They do have free will, but I do think that we do have dominion over our lives. And unless we give permission, my opinion, we're not going to get harmed.
I agree with you to an extent, but you don't have to be the one to give the invitation or the permission. It could be somebody else in your household. Or in your circle. Yeah, it could be somebody in your family, and it doesn't even have to be in your household.
Yeah,
affecting you.
Yes, and what I'm suggesting is me personally saying it, but I get where you're coming from there.
Well, I'm just thinking of the Amityville Horror, for instance. They moved into a house that was already haunted. It wasn't their fault,
Right?
But they also had a lot of underlying negative problems and a lot of vulnerabilities, and that's why we always look for those. What is it that makes you open to this negative phenomenon versus your neighbor?
And I know, Chris, you touched on it a little bit, but Larry and Robert, what are your opinions on charging clients or teams that charge clients?
No,
if you got a team, go ahead. I'm sorry, Robert.
No, I know there are teams out there that charge. It's no different than people that, that are looking for help. You get and they'll reach out to somebody and somebody will charge them even thousands of dollars to go ahead and supposedly cleanse something from their house from wherever. And of course, once they get the money, they're gone. No, look, this is too new of a field. In all sincerity, again, as we've all talked about, we don't even know 100% of what's out there. It's so vastly unknown. Can you give a guarantee that you're going to get something completely out of there? No, I'm anti-charge. I'm not in for that. Larry,
I've heard some groups talk about, gas money or whatever, but I 100% agree with Robert, and I'm laying odds Chris is in agreement too. You get a team that's going to charge somebody to do this, you better turn and run. No, I think any team worth their salt or have an ounce of integrity, and this is just my opinion, would not charge a client to investigate their home and try to help them out. To me, that is just wrong.
Yeah, I was on a show yesterday, and the interviewer actually asked me my thoughts on charging. And, she had brought up the topic, well, what if they called you from like 3 towns over and you can't afford to get there? I'm like, then find a team that's closer.
There's enough of them.
Find someone who's closer or has the money to pay for their gas to get there if you can't get there. It means that you can't efficiently help that client So make sure don't be afraid to reach out for help if you don't know something or can't do something.
I have a problem with, no surprise, just like my grandparents, I have a problem with charging. I've never even accepted, expenses. Having said that, I would say, Heather, I disagree. That if you absolutely need that gas money to go help that family, and what are the chances there's an actual good team three towns away? Go. Just take the $10. All right, this is today. Take the $55 to put the quarter tank in your gas, tank of gas, and go help them. But no, I also agree with both Larry and Robert. If somebody's charging you money, you can't trust these people. You can't. Number one, how are they going to prove what they did? And if you pay them $1,000, what's to stop them from saying, by the way, you have a terrible attachment. We're going to need to work on that as well.
Yep. And
that's going to actually be far more expensive because we have to get these really rare items. And so, we've got plenty of people who will keep you strung out with your fears, manipulate you, and keep taking from you. Don't trust anybody who charges, period.
Okay. And just to kind of go on the flip side, what are your guys' thoughts on paranormal tourism?
That's a tough one because I do tours, but the tours that I do are historical tours. For example, on the beach, Sebastian, little town of Fellsmere. I'm a historian of sorts. I won't call myself an official historian, but I love history and I love researching our areas. And I do walking tours of our beach in Vero, Sebastian, a little town called Fellsmere, where I discuss not only the history of the area and how the area developed, but also we only do tours where we've done investigations, and I'll share what we've found. And that's part of the tour. It's not like an investigation, obviously, because it's a tour. But so I do that, and I've done a lot of events, especially in the town of Fellsmere. I do a lot of charity events, things for different historical organizations. I'm on the board of the local historical society, and we do events to raise money to help preserve a building or to help the historical society, things like that. So in that sense, I'm involved in it, and I'm comfortable with how I do it. I don't, like I said, it's not an investigation. I'm not going in to solve somebody's problem. I'm merely sharing what we do and what we have found.
I think shedding light on the paranormal in general, or even the history, the routine, you can do that during any of these tours so that people have a better concept or better understanding of it. You can definitely make it pro rather than just letting what they see on TV all the time, which is to me.
And that's exactly what I do. My tours start with, it's not like it is on TV. I equate a paranormal investigation, for example, like a police stakeout, with which I can talk intelligently on. People see it on TV. It's full of adrenaline and excitement. And wow, just like a paranormal investigation on TV. The truth of the matter is they can be just boring as all get out. And you'll get hours and hours of nothing and 30 seconds of excitement. And that's kind of how I describe it. And you're right, Robert. I talk about what we do and how we do it and what the realities are as compared to what TV is. We prefer to show people what the reality of it is. And you know what? Folks appreciate that. They appreciate hearing the reality of it. So we take a lot of pride in that, in doing that and sharing that.
I actually don't have a problem with tourism. My grandparents used to take people to England and do a 3,000-mile tour of haunted Britain, from John O'Groats in Scotland all the way down to Land's End in Cornwall. We used to do tours of hauntings in Connecticut. My problem is when you take people into someplace you haven't vetted, which obviously you did, or when you take somebody into a dangerous place. That I have ethical issues with. Or if you're taking people who are disturbed into these areas, or people who are not respectful into these areas. There has to be some groundwork there to prepare the people too.
Yeah, and some rules to set down. Now, here's something I'm kind of playing with, guys. And I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Some of the larger venues that a lot of people go to experience an event, and certainly have no problem with it. But do you think there's a possibility some of these larger venues might actually might get fished out, if I can use a fishing term? That there's so many tours that go through that there, after a while, nobody wants to play anymore. Yeah.
How many times did somebody
problem.
ask you your name, and how many, after a while, again, like you're saying, some of these big venues, you have 1,000 people that go there a year. If you were on the other side, which spirits are just humans on the other side, would you, after a while, are you not going to be done with it? I mean, I would. Would you?
Well, they're not circus animals. Yeah, they're not circus animals that are here to entertain us at our command. They're going to after a while say, I'm done with you guys. That's my thought anyway. I just was wondering how you felt about it.
100% agree. These are people, and they need to be treated as people. My problem is the venues that say you're not allowed to cross over anyone. Screw you, buddy. Yep. If I see somebody in need, I'm going to help that person, regardless if they're living or dead, and they're not your slave.
Yeah, totally agree with that one. And like I said, they're not circus animals. They're not here to entertain us. They're doing us the honor and the privilege of contacting us, and they need to be shown respect, appropriate respect. Not, I command you to come out, and things like that. It drives me nuts.
Don't be confrontational with spirits unless you have no choice but to be confrontational because you're protecting a family or something. You do not do that.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yep. So what are your guys, that all sounds basically kind of how I feel too, but what about urban exploration where people trespass, go into abandoned buildings that are just...
Nah. Talking to the wrong guy for that one.
I'm sorry, what were you, retired what?
Cop, police officer, detective, in fact. Yeah, I mean, it's wrong. And you know what happens too, Heather, is that destroys all of our reputations. Some clown gets on YouTube and says, I'm breaking or going into this house, and no, we're not supposed to be here, but we're going to do it anyway. And then something happens. Next thing you know, we're all cast with that shadow. Lord, as a cop, you got one cop that does something wrong, and we're all tainted. What's the same thing in our field? One bozo does something like that, it makes us all look bad, and it irritates me. I really don't appreciate it.
Safety is a huge concern for us, and that's one of the biggest things we're going to preach about is definitely safety. And again, you're going to go into somewhere that's abandoned that you have no idea, the integrity of the construction, whether or not there's anybody in there. I mean, there's just way too many unknowns that I would frown upon it in a heartbeat. I wouldn't care for that.
For me, one of our top rules is if you're not there to help, you shouldn't be there at all. So urban exploration, yeah, maybe it's exciting. You go into the old tunnels that used to be a subway or something. Go have fun, but it's dangerous. And I don't want to see people getting hurt. I know people who have been these paranormal urban explorers and still are actually. A husband and wife team, and the husband's dead because he went someplace he shouldn't have been that was renowned for being dangerous as could be. And in that night, he immediately crumpled up in pain in his stomach during this investigation by himself. The next day, he's at the barber shop. The pains hit him again. He has to go to the hospital, and he was dead in a month. Heart failure from that pain. And his wife continues that tradition. And I just think she's going to end up dead too.
So was it spiritually? It wasn't physically dangerous. It was spiritually dangerous, is what you're saying.
In that particular place, but I've also seen them go into abandoned schools where nobody else has gone in first to see who's in there. They're going in by themselves. You don't know if they're junkies in there or, loose floors or what's going on. And you're going in there just to get your clicks and likes? No.
Well, yeah, and if you put it out on the YouTube, it goes back to that paranormal thrill seeker that I discussed before. And that's all well and good. I mean, I wouldn't jump out of a perfectly good airplane, right? But there's a lot of people that do because it's a thrill, and I get that. I understand that. I don't agree with the trespassing or anything, but especially when you go into those places and you tape it and you put it out on a video and you give enough information that people can find out where it is, you're not just endangering yourself then, you're putting somebody else in danger because they want to go have the experience. And so it's not just a something that's just harming yourself. It can harm other people too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, going back to, again, what Chris deals with a lot as well on the spiritual side of it, you can be putting your own family members in harm's way by far from what you're bringing back with you. Because let's be real, most of the thrill seekers are not really rehearsed on what the reality of what the hazards could truly be. We know we've been in the field long enough that, I mean, again, there's still plenty of people that go out there and they antagonize, they do things. They're also the same ones that are also having issues that are, they go for a while trying not to go ahead and bring it up. And unfortunately, even those that are not in the field or the ones that do it just part-time, they end up having the attachment or whatever that gets into their mind mentally. And yeah, it can be extremely life-threatening.
Mm-hmm.
And then that brings up, since you guys were talking about safety, it brought up a question. And I actually, Larry, you might be able to answer this one. I asked Ike when he was on my show several months ago, the same question.
Okay. Good man.
Is the right to carry a gun. If you go to, even if you have permission to go somewhere, let's say you have permission to investigate a cemetery at night, but someone on your team wants to bring a gun just for safety. To me, I view that as more of a liability because in the rare case that person gets possessed, what happens? So is it safe to bring a gun or is it not safe?
Well, you got to understand something. A gun to me is like a carpenter's hammer. It is the tool of my trade, and a lot of the folks on my team are current, former, or retired law enforcement. So my answer is going to be a little different in that respect. Now, if you're going to have somebody that's just wanting to go packing because they want to be sure, I've got an issue with that if they're not properly trained. There is an issue in today. Even if you know a place and you've vetted it, there's still the possibility at night of something happening. So I'm not against that if a person's appropriately trained. Your point about possibly a possession causing an issue, I've not seen any indication of that. That doesn't mean it can't occur. I can't disagree with you on that, but I think the chances of it getting that far before somebody could intervene is so small. Many times depending on where I go, I will be armed. But that's just my opinion. But on the same token, I've been trained for 40 years. So I'm a little bit different than maybe a lot of folks in that sense.
Chris, have you or Larry, either one of you, I have had team members, and this is what I'm asking, and that's kind of to Heather's point, because I'm on the fence with it in all sincerity. I wouldn't let just anybody or wouldn't want just anybody, again, somebody who's properly trained, who probably is, and I'm not saying everybody doesn't have a button that can be pushed, but for the most part, you have an idea who on your team, if you're,
right,
or more susceptible than others. But have you ever had a team member that has, I call it jumped, it's just where they're mentally, all of a sudden things just change for them. I know possession is typically long-term, but a jump in that instance where one of your team members strikes you or does something physical harm towards you, not in their normal, they never do it, even in a client. Have you ever had that happen on any of your locations?
I have not.
Larry has not. Chris?
I have not.
Yes.
It is the most bizarre, to Heather's point, you never expect it. And then all of a sudden you've got somebody who's swinging on you and you're like, it is shocking, but it can happen.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with the people that I know carry guns on our teams. We do have ex-military. We do have officers, former officers and things like that. They're trained and they're also, their minds are different. Which is a big point. These guys, they're stronger. But there are plenty of people who get involved in the paranormal, and we're very careful about those people, who shouldn't go on investigations, period.
True.
Armed or unarmed, because they're not in the right frame of mind. And they can bring something wrong into that case. So we're also very, very careful about making sure that even our own members, who are perfectly good, great people, that they're in the right mindset that day. And that's one thing I have so much respect for our members, because often people will come to me and say, Chris, I can't do it right now.
Yeah, like, I've had that.
Good, no problem.
You gotta have respect for that.
Whatever.
Yeah. But that does bring up a question, guys. I'm sure I know I get it. I'm sure you do. Inquiries from folks that get on your website or contact you. Hey, how can I be part of your team? And you just can't let anybody join. I mean, I've made a couple mistakes. I'll be the first to tell you. But what do you guys do to vet your any new team members? Now, fortunately, I haven't had to have any new team members in a number of years. But what do you guys do?
Heather?
What?
That's your question.
Yeah. I do Chris's admin work, so. But what we do is basically the application comes in with a series of questions that are standard. What's your experience? Kind of. And we always ask for 3 client references. And we tell them that it's not to talk about the case. We just want the names of 3 people you've helped. And we just want to ask them how you were as an investigator. So we kind of do the research on that area. And then they go through an interview with our regional director. Then they also go through an interview with Chris before they're actually brought into the foundation. And then they're put on a 90-day probation period. And we get to choose if we want to keep them after the 90 days. And then they also get to choose if they want to stay or not.
Oh, that's an excellent point, because the personality's got to meld. I mean, They may be great people, but they may not fit with your team. We've had that happen ourselves.
Yeah, chemistry is extremely important by far. And then you get these guys that you can get people that can have that Superman juice going on when they ought not have it. You can learn their personalities. And when they get around certain people, they start acting like they're more invincible compared to what you know them to truly be. That's not a good combo.
No.
And even regular members, your team members over time can change. And they have. Mine in the past have changed. I used to run with a very large team. And unfortunately, I've cut down over half just because the mentality had changed so dramatically. It was like, no, it's not safe, or it's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And you also, because I've been on investigations where it was really good investigators that I was with, but all of a sudden, some of the investigators just decided they didn't want to review the evidence. So it's like, why are you bringing a camera, an audio recorder, if you're not going to listen to it or look at the photos afterwards? They just tucked it in a drawer and forgot about it.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
And I've seen a lot of teams do that, where they go on investigations, and I guess this goes back to the thrill seeker mode. They go to investigations, they'll pull out a recorder that they can't even download, or even somehow, preserve it, because it doesn't do that. And hey, this is great. You hear that door close, you hear that voice. Okay, see you next week. Mm-hmm. What have you accomplished? What have you really done? And that's an issue of mine too.
There's truly different levels, and fortunately, there's a lot of teams that are, putting stuff out. Fortunate and unfortunate. There are teams that are putting things out there because I truly believe you can learn what not to do just as much as you can learn what to do just by watching online. So for clients out there, if they're looking at a prospective team, find out if they're online. If they're online, kind of start watching what they do. Are they taking it serious? Do they seem to know what because clients, for the most part, they're not really educated on the side. That's why they're reaching out. But it's not hard to start getting that mentality of how are they working together? Is it just a free for all? Is it chaotic, or do they look like they're moving in a direction?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great point.
Okay, and then finding a location. Just an example, we had a location out in the Las Vegas area that we investigated quite often. We hosted our team meetings there because they had a little conference room, and it was a great place for us to do our team trainings. However, this location wouldn't let us take any video or photos because they wanted to ensure nothing got out that could identify the location. Do you think that would be a good location to conduct research at, or is that purely paranormal tourism?
Did they not want photos and video pushed out there because they want anonymity?
Yes.
No,
We could do
you're still
audio,
doing
but we couldn't
research.
name the location.
Yeah, research.
It's the same thing as being a doctor. You don't treat Joe Smith down the street and then tell the world, hey, and
Yeah.
check out the cake or sore on his ass. I mean,
I haven't quite heard it put
honestly,
like
I
that
don't know
before.
where cake or sores show up, but aren't they here? I think they're on the edge of the mouth, aren't they? Anyway.
Yeah,
Boy,
I
you
get
got one
the
on your
anonymity
ass, that's a
part,
real problem.
but they wouldn't even let us take any video. We offered to sign contracts saying we wouldn't release the information. It was just purely personal experiences and audio.
Well, the only and I'm an evidence collection guy. I mean, that's my background. If you can't collect evidence to store, preserve it, and compare it with evidence you have later or from other investigations, I don't know that it's going to help you that much, because I think we all agree we may believe in people's psychic ability, but at this point in our work, we can't prove a lot of it yet. So if you can't video, audio record, or record reactions to equipment, I don't know that it'd help you a whole lot. That's my thought on it. I mean, you got to have all the data put together so you can start to come to a conclusion. That's my thought on it.
I mean, you're obviously limited on what can you still do anything there? At least you can still working on audio, but to the point, it's like CCTV cameras. It's great when you can, if you're limited, having those on particular stairways and entry points so that you know who was there at any particular time to be able to document, hey, there was nobody up there. Look, we have, it's already recorded. So yeah, you do miss out on quite a bit of, what you can bring for integrity in the sense, being able to back it up.
And I'm a little bit different.
What?
And I'm a little bit different. I'm not an evidence person. If I'm going to let you in on a dirty secret, I don't even like the paranormal at all. It annoys me. It offends me in a lot of ways. It doesn't conform to what I want to think of as reality. But after all this time, what matters to me is, am I helping those people? For me, that's all I care about. Yes, we collect the data. Yes, we collect reports. We're going to hold on to that. We're going to use that to do, invest in research, try and understand why these locations become haunted, that kind of thing. What works, what doesn't work. But I'm like my grandfather in a lot of ways. He had a cassette recorder. I've got a tablet. That's all I use.
And that makes sense, and I think that's what makes Paranormal Unity so important, because I think all these points of view are important and are valid. See, a lot of the work that we do is that we don't do a lot of homes for reasons I won't go into here. We do them on occasion, but a lot of our buildings our venues rather are historical buildings or government buildings, things like that, and we do use them for the purpose of research and gathering information. So my issues, or I'm not as involved, I think you two are, in actually helping people in their homes as much. So we are a data collection group trying to put together the answers. But I think there's a place for all of us at that table. Okay, and that's why I think Paranormal Unity, as we like to call it, is so important, because Chris, hearing your point of view sure gives me some ideas, maybe gives me some thoughts of, maybe I need to rethink how I do that. And we can only get that by talking to each other.
I'm not a fan of Paranormal Unity. Go figure. Honestly, I think your approach is fantastic, and it makes perfect sense for your background. And you're probably going to get a hell of a lot farther than I have because of the way you deal with it. But just like they don't allow vigilantes, the police don't allow vigilantes, I have a problem with Paranormal Unity. Somebody doesn't wake up one morning and say, I want to be a brain surgeon. Give me that scalpel, and then run out and do it. So I have a problem with respecting everybody who wants to say they're a paranormal researcher. First, show me that you're actually ethical. Show me that you're doing it properly. Otherwise, find a good mentor. By the way, we mentor. And it's free.
And here's something that I've been preaching for an awful long time, and I've run into every roadblock, and you guys may totally disagree with this also. But in my profession, we have standards and training. To be a cop, you have to go through training, you have to meet certain standards, and you must continue with certain continuing education standards. And there's a framework. And how I like to explain it is, if there's a homicide here in Vero Beach and a homicide up in Tacoma, Washington, laws are a little different, some rules are a little different, but essentially the framework is the same. That way everybody can share evidence, and it's all being collected in a similar way. And that's where I think unity can be helpful, because then you avoid that problem of, I'm going to be a paranormal investigator today. I saw a TV show. but now, sorry, I thought you were going to have a heart attack, Chris. But what I'm getting at is, if we had some sort of standards that generally everybody could agree to, not you have to do it my way because I'm right, but a framework for people to work with, we would have maybe begin to avoid, at least at some level, the paranormal thrill seeker.
The foundation actually has our own Hippocratic oath, our code of ethics that I would love to see the whole paranormal community adopt. But one of our actual stated goals is to educate the next generation of researchers and to make this a profession that can be respected. We want to put standards in place, and we need a lot of people working together, networking, and sharing these ideas, and not being afraid to call out the
charlatans.
People. All right, yeah, that's a good way to say it. People who may not know exactly what they're doing, or the showman.
Well, then that's something I've been preaching for years. I actually tried to start a couple of grassroots programs to do just that. The problem is, so many that's not the way I do it, and I'm not going to listen to how you do it. Well, that's not what I'm saying. Can't we come to a consensus on a better way? And there's too many, as you said earlier, egos in our little field that Lord, yes. I've just run into roadblocks doing it. But I'm a big believer in that. And Chris, I think that would solve a lot of your angst here of people just deciding to do it. If we had some sort of standards that folks if we could agree to.
I can't even agree to terminology.
Amen to that. Hey, that's one of the issues. Exactly. Can't even agree with terminology.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the organizations you were talking about. I really wish the one had continued, and it's similar to what Chris and I do with the foundation, and we try to encourage everybody to share their evidence with us, regardless of whether it's a Warren case or not. Mm-hmm. Still they can take their clients' names off of it. Everything that you had outlined for the International Bureau. And it just getting our own members, to share information. It's so I can see the trouble that you had with that one.
Yeah, it was a good try, but I'm just a big believer. If we all start doing things at least somewhat the same, and people get the wrong impression, they're trying to say, well, you're trying to shove a procedure down our throat. No, that's not it at all. But if simple things like before you do an EVP session, date, time, venue, who's there.
Yep.
That should be just a standard procedure. That's not changing how you ask the questions. It's just a standard procedure. But that way things are unified. I could go off on that.
And we have lots of forms with standardized information that we look for all of our cases. But yeah, one of the major frustrations I have is even with our own members, most of them do not want to share their cases. And to me, you're not much of a professional if you don't share your research. What good is all of that research, all that time you've put in, if you're not sharing it? I understand protecting your client, but
it's got nothing to do with it.
Doctors talk to one another. They share information. Scientists share information. That's what we should be doing if we're going to be a real profession.
Well, people get so worried about judgment rather than just going ahead and putting out their personal experience. I'm completely open book. I really don't care. I'm just going to throw it out there. And again, Larry doesn't have to. All I'm looking for quote, para unity is have enough respect to let me go ahead and give you my point of view, and then I'll
Sure.
listen to your point of view. That's pretty much it. Are we going to be on the same research? You know, there's certain types of research as opposed to when you're actually treating a location. Definitely not going to be on the same page at the same time. Just isn't.
Agreed. But
But
isn't that
having that understanding and respecting one another for that, that's really where it's at. Like you
and
said,
isn't that a societal issue now, Robert? We cannot sit down and have a conversation.
no.
You know, let's talk about it. We don't have to agree, but let's talk about it. You may have an idea. You know what? I didn't think about that, Robert. That's a good idea. But we're not going to know
Right.
that if we don't talk.
That's before you get to the rest of the para unity, to me, that's the first thing. If you can't open that conversation, you've already
And
balked
I
on.
think, yep, I totally agree.
And Chris, I'm the opposite of you. I love the paranormal. As far as the more strange it gets, even the better. Every location.
Somebody here has made a comment that Hans Holzer and the Warrens shared information. I hate to burst your bubble, but Hans Holzer hated my grandparents. Always. He felt that they were Johnny-come-latelys trying to take his thunder. There was no reciprocity there.
No love lost, huh? Interesting. I
And
didn't know
talking
that.
about the sharing of information, what about these teams that lay claim to different venues? This is our team. We're the only team that investigates it, and we're still not going to share our information to you.
Do they own the place?
No comment.
There's plenty of teams that do that by far. There's no doubt. You know, I enjoyed having other teams come to ours without telling them what we got, just so they could experience it for themselves. And and we didn't even catch some of the stuff that they have caught. You know, we were still completely, because again, without them, everybody gets their mind wrapped around. And I agree with the research side of it, but it can also go ahead and limit your openness and willingness to go ahead and experience the full location to the point that you could actually have a better understanding of what's going on. So we would invite other teams there. It was fantastic.
We did that in Fellsmere. We have an old school. It's actually the oldest masonry schoolhouse in Indian River County here. And I would bring teams in from all over that just wanted to come in and we'd investigate. I enjoyed that because it got me a chance to see how they investigate, got a chance for us to talk. And I do agree with you, Robert, just to kind of change the subject a little bit there. You're talking about the research getting in the way of experiencing it. My buddy Chris in England has kind of, I don't know if I can say this on open TV, but he's helped me remove that stick out of my anatomy a little bit, to the point where I'm evolving and understanding that sometimes you just got to sit back and experience. And he's helped me a lot with that. And I agree. And I've while I'm still a big evidence guy, I've really come to appreciate the ability to sit there and experience what's happening, if that makes sense.
Be in the moment. Yeah. Very Buddhist.
And then Brian asked a question.
Actually, I apologize.
No, go ahead.
I think it's a great idea to have these other teams coming into these places. Mm-hmm. It's a control group. Don't give them information. See what they come up with, and then compare.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a wonderful way to do it. Yeah, if we don't have controls, if we don't have something to go against, to compare, I mean, it isn't really even
research.
A profession. It's not research.
Right.
Oh, I think it is.
If you're not working in a way.
I see what you mean. Yeah, sorry. I jumped in on you.
Brian wants to know, this is similar to the pay to play. What are your thoughts on locations charging for entry just to investigate?
There's some spots here in Florida. There's a jail, Green Cove Springs, I think. They do that because that's how they keep the doors open. That's how they keep the building from falling apart. I don't have an issue with that. If it's just somebody doing it for selfish reasons, there may be an issue. But a lot of these places do it just to keep the venue open, to keep the roof from caving in, and to improve it. I don't have a problem with that under most circumstances myself.
I agree with that. By all means, I think that makes sense.
You know, for me, I'm not a fan of these types of places where you buy a place and start pimping it out, basically, because you're doing that to the spirits too. And all right, look, I live in Colombia, for God's sake, because I have issues with a lot of things. And one of the problems I have is that the reliance on got to make money, got to make money, got to make money. So yeah, I've never paid to go on a venue, and I never will.
I get for people trying to experience it, look, half of them or more than half of them, probably 3/4 of them, it's probably going to be their own hysteria that they're going to actually be, especially they feed off one another. I mean, my gosh, obviously when we're investigating, we're trying to keep the numbers small. You go ahead and put 5 or 10 people together in one of those, I guarantee you somebody's going to lose their mind, and then it just goes right on through the rest of them. It's wonderful if you want to do a venue like that. Your integrity's kind of shot, but you'll get the wow factor out of it, no doubt.
I can see a positive in that sometimes you'll get somebody in there that wants to experience it but hasn't, and you end up with a damn good investigator out of it. Somebody that's and as much as, and I'm not a big fan of the TV shows either, guys, but let's face it, the TV shows did produce folks that became serious in the business and wanted to do good. So there can be some positives to it, and I'm mostly a fan of folks that are just trying to keep a historical venue from being torn down. See, I
respect that. I respect that.
I see where teams do it to, it's no different than the ghost hunts. They'll do 30 or 40 bucks or whatever, and have a venue open and go ahead. Some of them will go ahead and do it for a charity. Others will do it, go ahead and obviously to, I guess, retap their coffers. I've done it in the past years ago. Be the first to say it, where we've had a couple of events and we had people come in to give them the experience. But again, controlled location, you kind of give them some training, give them obviously go over the rules. The whole point, it's great when you can go ahead and step into, in case you do get somebody who's going to last, Larry, in the future, as far as it's going to be good, but teaching them right off the start about integrity and respect. And
that's what it's all about. And I think if you do it, you were talking about intent earlier, Chris. I think the intent. Oh, yes. Intent. I think intent is important here. Like on my tours, I talk about doing things the right way, and that it's not some sort of TV show, and we teach respect, we teach the use of equipment. And frankly, my number 2 showed up at one of my things several years ago with his wife, and he happened to be one of the instructors at the fire academy when I was running the police academy, and he saw me. Larry, how are you doing? Yeah, my wife brought me. He had a very profound experience, and now I guarantee you, he'd be one of the best investigators you've ever seen, and he grew from that. So I do see some positive if, and Robert, to your point, handled properly, handled respectfully, handled with the right intent. I see possibilities.
My experience has always been, frontline and being contacted by groups who get in over their head, or who went into a venue they didn't vet properly, and they brought the public with them, and all of a sudden there's this, honest to God, Nazi summoned demon or black entity that looks like a little girl right out of the movie The Ring, who chases this group for 2 years, including going to their cases before they arrive at the case. Yeah, the woman who made initial contact with that spirit ended up becoming a great investigator in Germany. But she also had her husband break his leg being pushed down the basement stairs by this thing. Her daughter was pulled out of bed and clawed by this thing. Other team members had gotten attacked. It can be incredibly dangerous. So I guess it's because of that experience that I've had. I'm so leery.
And rightfully so. I can understand that.
For me, it's all about the client. It's all about taking care of them, and I don't want teams to become my clients anymore, and they do often.
Yep. And then getting back to kind of like similar to how a client knows of a reputable team, what about an everyday person or paranormal investigator wanting to go to an event. And just as a quick example, we had an issue in Vegas where a member of a team or a team leader was setting up a whole bunch of events all over town. And he was charging $100, $200, $300, and $400 and said it was for the venue. And people were paying for it. Then all of a sudden the event would get canceled. And in his contract, it said no refunds.
Oh.
And it was consistent. How do you determine if an event is legitimate or not, especially when this person, a lot of people thought were their friend?
Well, Vegas just had a big event there that, you know, the person who put together, to your point, turn around and a lot of people are still not paid from it. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, probably half of them were signing up for his next event, which makes absolutely no sense.
I would like to know who that is because I got a bad feeling I know.
I can tell you. I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was my other point is that whole, because that Vegas, I was supposed to go to that event, but something told me not to waste my money to go because I had already moved to Florida at the time.
Somebody was speaking to you.
Yes.
You know, I think there's so many of them out there, but most of the ones I've seen are run by, you know, some sort of promotion company, and you can check them out easy enough. But certainly, I mean, like my little tours, my little rinky-dink tours, you can just check and see the different folks that have commented on my tours. And I think folks need to do those kind of vetting of different events such as that. Mm-hmm. Due diligence, you know, and shame on that person. Oh my God, that's horrible. And once again, it's one of those folks that makes us all look bad.
100%.
So.
And do you guys think, getting onto the what makes us look bad, do you think the TV shows, I know in, you know, long term, some of them were good, but do they actually make do they do good for the paranormal team as far as how people look at it? Or do they cause more harm?
Is that an overall question?
Yeah.
I'll be the first to answer that. I definitely think they take away the integrity of the field. I think it's way too much entertainment and they don't post that it's entertainment. That's my point of view.
Yeah. My thought here is I hate cop shows on TV. You know how many times I had somebody say, "Well, you got the fingerprint. Can't you put it into the machine and tell me who it is? Why haven't you solved the case yet?" So I hate cop shows because it gives people the wrong impression. And generally speaking, that's how I feel about the paranormal shows. One caveat, and I mentioned it earlier, especially some of the older ones, it got people interested. It brought the field to the forefront. It made it a whole lot more legitimate in people's eyes, if I can use that word. Unfortunately, it's entertainment, and people think that we just walk into a place and immediately we're getting EVPs and seeing shadow people and whatnot, and that's a bunch of horse hockey. So I think there was a place for it. I think it helped bring the field out in the open a lot more. But I think there's so many of them now too, and there's so many of them that have had issues of legitimacy. I think in the long term, to going with what Robert said, in the long term, I believe it hurts us. But at the same token, people would not be watching your podcast right now, Heather. They wouldn't be watching this if they weren't interested. And 25 years ago, there was none of this out there that got people interested. So there is a positive to it. Mm-hmm. I think it just is important that the people that are in it manage it properly and don't give people. Do you remember? I won't mention the name of the show, but do you remember that one of the original shows, they would have entire hour episodes where they didn't get anything early on? Okay. Mm-hmm. See, that's what we got to get back to.
Your first 3 shows, to your point, absolutely took the stigma away enough that it would become popular. Absolutely, I agree with that part. Since then, though.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I agree with both of you. I think it opened us up. It made it more acceptable. And I think, and I'll be the first to admit, I've only watched 3 episodes of any of these programs in my entire life. And it was enough to disgust me and make me feel like, no, these are complete and absolute crap.
With your background, I can see why you'd feel that way, truthfully.
Well, you know, you hear so many people say, everything I learned on TV. I don't even want to learn from my grandparents' videos. Those things are 40 years old, for God's sake.
Right.
Things have changed.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if we don't treat this like an actual professional field of study, then it becomes a religion. And go ahead, watch my grandparents' videos and believe everything that they said, but you're ignoring all of the other experiences come since then. You know, my grandparents, when they had 20 years experience, were completely different than the people they were when they had 40 years experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my grandfather used to equate rock and roll with Satanism, witchcraft with Satanism. He learned eventually, maybe not so much about the rock and roll, but he learned that witchcraft applied, you know.
Professionalism, Chris, comes hand in hand with standards and training. I'm just saying.
I totally agree with you.
And it's so hard too, because like one of the popular TV shows that's still on today, they actually, whether it's true or not, but
GA?
I'm not saying, because I don't want to get in trouble with people I know. But they
I don't know
actually
anybody on that show. I'll say it, GA.
I'm sorry, no, but they actually got their start, and this was told a lot in Vegas, which kind of gives it away. But they got their start by breaking into their first location, and they filmed it. And they even admittedly said they faked some of the evidence in that with fishing line. But then when they started getting real activity, they then went to the owner and apologized for breaking into their location and got him to sign a waiver so they wouldn't get in trouble when they aired it on TV.
Wow. This might be this might have been the same group of people that screwed up things down here at St. Augustine. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's stories that get told, but I've heard it from several people in the field that, you know, I view as reputable, and it was a common story that got passed around in the Vegas area about how
the host actually believes in the paranormal.
What was that?
Do you think the current host of that program actually believes in the paranormal?
I believe he's had experiences when he was younger, but again, he's been in the field for as long as he has. I think his intentions have changed.
I don't know who you're talking about.
One hell of a detective there.
Moving right along.
Yes.
Well, to Chris's point about the 20 to 40 year difference of time and everything, that's a big aspect that a lot of people get caught up in, wrapped around, is not being willing to, being open to learn or relearn something. You get that new information, you're dealing with a location, or you got particular research that is just going in an opposite direction that you never honestly anticipated, but it's showing you it's there. How do you deny it? But we got a lot of guys that want to throw the blinders on and just pretend, no, this is the way we only do it.
Yeah. You got to evolve. You got to grow. You got to change. And that's been a problem in our field, too. We've also been very stagnant. There's so little that we've actually tried to expand on or change or grow from. And if that's another area that's a bugaboo of mine, we've got to grow. We've got to evolve, change our tactics, change our methods when we need to. We've got to grow.
Got to change.
I agree with you
too. You know, our approaches, our techniques, our theories, everything that we do is open to new interpretation. Mm-hmm. None of us have absolute answers. Mm-hmm. And I've done this on 5 continents, and I've seen it manifest differently all around the world. It tells me a lot about our power and our beliefs and what we can shape. So I have far more questions today than I did when I was a cocky 22-year-old thinking, my grandpa just called me a demonologist. Look at me. I know everything.
And we need to come up with new experiments.
Yes.
Come up with something else besides the standard EVP or, everybody thinks that, because one of the tools that I always talk about that I love is a fidget spinner.
Mm-hmm.
I use that on my investigations, similar to dowsing rods. I usually have one right here next to me, but I have ones that light up, and they light up in different color. Each one's a different color. So you can put them in a dark room and still see which one's spinning. And, it's like, hey, if you're here, can you spin the red one?
Oh.
And it actually works. It's amazing how, and it was funny because I was hosting an event and one of the guests said, hey, check this out. And she pulled a fidget spinner out and it started working.
Cool. You've mentioned it to me before.
It's experimenting. Yeah. Aiden brought me one. So.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, it's, if you don't think outside of the box or listen to what other people suggest, you're missing out on the opportunities to come up with a new investigation technique.
Absolutely.
And we need to come up with new investigation techniques. We need to come up with new ways to try and identify what it is out there. And we get so stuck on what we do, it's stagnating us. Mm-hmm. And we've got to evolve.
We should put together a post of all the different techniques that we can come up with and share that. I mean, a pamphlet, a book, or something, just to get people thinking. I think, because all of us have got different ways of doing things.
Absolutely.
There are people who use the tried and true baby powder on the floor type of thing, or the bells strung on strings. But those are perfectly good. We should share more of our techniques so that other people can try them out too.
Yeah, mm-hmm. That's why I hosted the presentation on non-tech tools, with all the different tools and that you can find in your home without having to spend hundreds of dollars on this expensive equipment.
Totally. A mercury thermometer and a glass of water. That's a great way to find cold spots.
Yep. Okay. And then one thing we talked about a little bit earlier, but I wanted to touch back on, is when you go on for actual research, besides the information that you collect during the investigation, like if there's a cold spot, the temperature, the EVPs, the video recordings, what other data to be considered an actual investigation needs to be collected besides what happens during the investigation?
Atmospheric data.
Bingo. And solar data also. Solar and atmospheric. We start our investigations that way. I do temperature, wind speed, humidity, dew point, solar storms, solar flares, and we document all that and keep
That's the kind of stuff we want. And also, I mean, you've got to look at the actual history, like you said earlier. Do that background. Do your due diligence. When was the house built? What happened around that house? Mm-hmm. We had a case in Pennsylvania. It was fascinating. It had been a roadhouse and became a family's home. But they were being haunted by people who had been blown up in a dynamite explosion, I think in Conestoga, Pennsylvania, over 100 years ago. And holy God, I apologize, guys. I have completely lost my train of thought on where I was going with why I was telling you that.
It's okay. I've had you live for 2 hours now.
I've done that. Oh, I've done that.
I'm an old man.
No, going back to Larry, you were talking about definitely being on the research side of it and putting a pamphlet together with all the different ideas. Wonderful by far. But even how do people document realistically? How, what's a way that that's going to be a reasonable way to keep the integrity to things? Is there any consistency to bring to light about how they're documenting their evidence or potential evidence?
Well, like we take photographs, EVPs, video. We all download or upload to the cloud, and then I'll put a lot of it on discs, and then I lock them up in a safe. A lot of our stuff goes into certain files on the cloud right now, and that's how we share it with each other. That's the easiest way to do it. The downside to that is, looking at it from a legal standpoint, which I know we shouldn't do and we don't do, is, can somebody tamper with it? And that's something that we work on. And that's why a lot of our evidence is also placed in a safe on a thumb drive or in a disk, and we keep it that way. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Well, even before you get that technical, as far as where you're at, I mean,
Oh, okay.
when you're watching somebody pick any show, or you watch just somebody doing like an EVP session, that's the most basic. Would everybody agree that's pretty basic as far as for investigating EVP
Sure.
session?
Sure.
When the hell do you ever hear anybody tag anything? Tagging, saying an outside noise, hey, that was my stomach. Whose stomach does not move? Fantastic. But
we do every
time
time.
you watch all these live shows, you got 12 different people walking around making all the noise.
Yes.
Your stomach never rumbles. Are you serious?
We make a joke. Well, Spanky, my number 2, his stomach's always rumbling, and we'll do that. And this is, once again, we teach this to guests if we have them on tours or things like that. If your stomach rumbles, just say Larry's stomach, or I moved the chair, I hit the wall, vehicular noise outside. Yes, that's vitally important.
I apologize. I'm going to go back for a second just because I'm so embarrassed by that earlier moment. My point had been, without the historical research, we would have never known about the dynamite explosion, and that these people had lived in the roadhouse and made the connection with that, and the things that the family was seeing. It all took actual historical research to get there.
And to kind of wrap that into where Robert was going, all that data, the names that you may get an EVP that you've been able to maybe connect with the a casualty in the explosion, all that goes into the file and you keep it. And now also we were talking about the getting the atmospheric solar conditions. What happens if, Robert, you're doing an investigation up in your neck of the woods and I'm doing one here, and we both find out because we share information during a full moon where the temperature was 72 to 75 degrees and the humidity was within 5 points, and we both got data on that. We both picked up EVPs, or we both our crews caught a shadow person or something, and the atmospheric and solar conditions were identical at that time. That's data. That's something we can look at and find out if there's some sort of commonality.
We have a research project exactly like that in the works, where we're also looking at things like solar energy portals that open on Earth. NASA's now plotting ley line layouts around the world. I'm not a big fan of those personally, because I don't really understand them. But the other stuff, we want to know it all so we can start seeing, why is this phenomena happening here at this time, and not next door. So I agree completely with what you're talking about. It's very important to have that sharing of data.
Right. And also the collection of the data that we get is because it was interesting. There was one investigation I didn't go on, but I was reviewing the evidence afterwards. And they kept saying that every so often paranormal activity would happen, like every 5 or 10 minutes. And you could see it on the Eddy Plus readout where the temperature would start dropping, the humidity would drop, and there would be a vibration just before it would drop. And then
the air
before it started
conditioning
rising again, and before it started rising again, there'd be a vibration again. And they, the investigators are like, oh, that's paranormal activity. But then when I went back and listened to the audio recordings at the same time, you could hear the air conditioner kick in exactly when this phenomenon was going on, is what they thought was, proof that they caught something.
Yeah.
Do any of you guys use a device called an EDI Plus?
I do not.
Interesting device. It measures vibration, humidity, temperature, EMF, and then it's got an SD card. You put it in the top, you set it, you turn it on, and it records that entire period. And if you get anything that is abnormal, you graph it on your computer, and you can actually pinpoint, like let's say at 9 o'clock, I got an EVP, and I go back and I check the EDI, and the temperature dropped, humidity changed, and there was a vibration at that same time.
I think that's a very useful tool. I like that one a lot.
It's probably one of my favorite tools because you actually get data out of it. So
it's on my wish list.
Just curious.
When we sell the book, I'll buy it for you, I promise.
Okay, and Robin wants to know, do you think there will ever be a time where paranormal investigators have to be licensed?
Be a great way to keep the ne'er-do-wells out, but no.
Can
I
you
don't
see
see
a
it in our
government
lifetime.
agency actually legislating this? And I would love it, but no.
I would love to head that agency up.
Right?
I think there could be a what's the word I'm looking for? A certification process through a oh shoot, that they do with schools. Southern Association of Colleges and Schools
Accreditation?
accreditation. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah,
I would
we're
love
working on it.
see, and that's what I was trying to do also. Once again, not because, and I wanted to actually get a group of people together to come up with ideas. I actually had some folks that were willing to do it, but COVID came and all those things happened. But to get together to come up with a framework and do some sort of standard of approval. There we go back to the standards and training thing again, but some way to certify, and I hate that word, but I hope you guys know where I'm coming from. Just so that we could put a stamp of approval saying at least a body out there agrees with a certain set of things, and this person follows that. They got so that's the closest thing I think we'll ever get is maybe a certification of sorts. That's
Which is why it's
recognized.
so important that we have organizations that we can trust that will accredit you, because I have far too many friends who show off their credentials for the paranormal. I don't have any, by the way. I just don't understand that. I mean, just because some guy on the internet you've paid $1,000 to taught you a class and you've got a paper, how do you know
Yep.
that information's any good? So yeah, I mean, I definitely, that's our goal. We want to do that, and I would love actually to see both of you teaching classes with us. I think you have very valid viewpoints and very intelligent ways of doing what you do, and it's different than what we do. And I would love to see you guys help us educate people.
And when it comes to getting the certifications, because Chris, you know, I'm one of those ones that flaunts my certifications because I'm proud of them.
Yeah, but you are different. You actually went out and you pursued actual study.
Right.
And I'm proud of you for that.
It took me years before I picked a place to go because I wanted to make sure that that school was accredited. I mean, granted, it's not your 4-year university accreditation, but they are accredited with the American Association of Psychics. So at least they had that there, and I trusted that, and that's what made me go to the school. And that's what you need to do is if you're going to sign up for classes to get certifications or training, do research on the school first. Make sure that you're getting actual training. And I went into this thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to be easy. I'm going to breeze through it. And it was hard. It was harder than I thought it was going to be.
Unfortunately, the internet is full of these. Hey, for $29.95 and an hour's worth of your time, you can become a psychic medium and have a certification for it. Please.
Well, and I think that's one reason why we're probably years away from seeing that as being a universally accepted certification, because hell, we can't even get our own people to agree with each other. Yep. So that's
it's all about where you go.
About this idea, though, is so many giant world governments have explored this field and done it for real.
That's a whole different podcast. Yeah.
Yeah. But if the government's willing to accept that this stuff is real, then yeah, there should be a way to accredit people properly as well. There should be a path there, but I know it won't be in my lifetime.
But if everybody that wants to do it, Chris, keeps saying it can't be done, then it never will be.
I'm a big believer in not using the word "can."
Yeah, you get
I believe it's self-limiting, totally.
Yeah.
So
didn't we just spend 2 hours talking about this on the last show?
We did.
My last show was
we're an hour 4 of our marathon, Heather and I.
Every other Wednesday is a long Wednesday for me. But I'm doing what I love, and I'm telling, I'm helping educate people how to do it. I don't want to say the right way and sound conceited, but I'm, helping people learn a better way to do things.
More ethical way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Putting information out there and giving them the choice to go ahead, and at least it's a consistent, you're giving them different perspectives, but you're giving them the opportunity to find real information from people that have experience, and then they can determine from there where they want to go. I think that's extremely important. To me, people are just turning around to anybody.
This is why I love these podcasts that people do that we get invited on all the time. These are people who are doing it for free. They're not trying to make a buck. They're not trying to become famous. They're trying to educate. And I have so much respect for them.
Yeah, but as I've learned the hard way, we need to vet these podcasts as well, because I've been on some very shady ones that all I could do was smile and be like, when is this hour going to be over with? Do I fake internet issues and all of a sudden close out my screen?
That thought has come through my mind once or twice.
I get calls or messages from him. Who the heck did you connect me with? So I go on the show first to make sure. And there's several that I haven't told Chris about, because it's like, you're not going to want to get on this show.
And once again, there's just so many out there too, and it waters down the folks that are trying to do the right thing.
Yep.
So I wish there was some sort of certification to do shows such as this. Maybe that would help.
It needs to be
wish
an
there was
apprenticeship.
certification for parenthood.
Whole different subject. Whole different subject.
Definitely not enough time for that one.
No.
I'm a former social worker and child abuse investigator. Oh God, I wish there was certification for parents.
Oh, that's what I spent most of my police career doing. So I hear you.
Yeah, that's crap work.
Yeah. I'm lucky I came out of it in one piece. Why don't teams post more data?
Why don't the teams post or share data?
Because it's mine. I don't want anybody else to see it. It's mine. I'm not going to give it out. I'm going to give it to the TV shows.
My precious.
That's my opinion. I think people are so afraid of giving up what they got. Maybe somebody else will get it too, and I won't get that spot on the TV show. I'm being cynical about it, but that's kind of how I feel. Folks are, and the cops used to be that way. We would have murders occurring on the West Coast, and the bad guy would come to the East Coast and do the same thing, but agencies wouldn't share because we're going to solve the case ourselves. And then finally, into the 80s, law enforcement changed, and we began sharing information nationwide. And you know what happened? We caught more bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
We in the paranormal field, just my opinion, folks, we in the paranormal field have got to get away from that's mine. I can't give it to you because you might become more famous than me. We got to get away from that. We got to share it, and we got to post it, and we got to compare it, and that's how we're going to start finding answers.
The people who are worried like that are the people that shouldn't be in this field anyway. It's all about their egos.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And
we don't share the particulars, the private details.
Like the addresses and stuff.
But the data is different. We'll talk about it. We'll explain what we were experiencing. So we're teaching. Mm-hmm. We should do more. I agree. We lack. We should share atmospheric data on these dates. This is what had happened. We should have a database that all investigators in the world can contribute to. Is that what you were trying to do earlier?
That's exactly what I was trying. IBPIR, International Bureau of Paranormal Research and Investigation, was designed just to do that, and I couldn't get folks interested. I got a handful of folks, Heather being one of them.
I still tell people I'm a member.
Well, I was spent a lot of time putting it together, and I'll give it another shot, but the mindset in the field's got to change. People have got to want to be willing to share, and I don't know that we're there yet.
No, well, we can't get our own members to share most of the time.
Yeah,
that's insane to me. How can you not trust the foundation when it's the thing you wanted to join so terribly? Yeah. Why join something you don't trust?
I got to put a shameless plug in for my folks. I got, no offense there, Robert, I got the greatest team on the planet, and I'm so proud of my folks at the FBPI. We all have the same mindset, and I think that's what what gives me a lot of inspiration and energy. We all have the same vision to march forward, and I'm really proud of my group. And I'm sure, Robert, your group's the same way. So, and
No, but we're always learning. So I mean,
yeah.
we're not ever going to say we're the best by far. We're
Oh
always willing to
no.
learn. But
We're not the best team out there. I just got the best group of people working together. That's what I mean.
having those particular individuals that come together and just make that solid chemistry
Yeah.
that you can count on. I mean, it's
Exactly.
just and what do they get for it? In all sincerity, nothing. But it's that feeling they get, that true feeling when you help. Chris, you know this as well as I do. When you actually go ahead and you make that difference in somebody's life, who the hell needs payment at that point? That's your payment.
Best feeling in the world.
Yep.
And what are your guys' thoughts when you're collecting data, personal experiences? Is it considered data or not?
That's a good question.
With evidence?
Is it evidence or not evidence? Because it's personal experience. Go ahead. Chris, what do you got?
Does it come with evidence? Do you have evidence to back up what you were feeling or what you experienced? In that case, yeah, report it. But if it's just a feeling, share it with your team leader if you're a psychic, and then leave it alone. Let the team leader gather that information from any psychics that are in the group and their feelings. Don't have a bunch of psychics talking to one another and pulling themselves down the rabbit hole. Because I've seen that a million times.
Yeah, during investigations,
God, I'm a psychic. I do respect them. You wouldn't know it from the way I talk.
I got to agree with you, Chris. Like I said, that stick has been removed from my anatomy quite a bit, so I'm a little bit more open. And even my buddy Chris in England will agree, unless you've got a way to corroborate the name, it's not really evidence. Now, do you guys have time for a quick story that'll kind of illustrate this? Okay. This is an example of how Chris was with us on an investigation. And to make a long story really short, we were at I was just about ready to sign off from him. And I always wear earphones. Nobody can hear him, only I can. So no information's getting out. He just says, "Larry, who's Lucy?" Not a name you hear a whole lot anymore, right? And I said, "I don't know." I turned to one of my folks that was with me. Actually, I was a guest of the venue. And I said, "Janie, do you know who Lucy is?" Her eyes got about the size of saucers, and she just shook her head. And I said, "Okay, Chris, see you later, buddy. I'll get with you later." And I got off the internet, and I said, "Okay, who's Lucy?" Well, Lucy was the granddaughter of the owners who killed herself right out in front of the building in the 60s. Now, if it had been Mary, Debbie, a little more contemporary name, probably wouldn't have been as interesting. But Lucy was, and that's an example of me getting a little bit of evidence from a psychic, but I've got now something to back it up. I would consider that evidence of sorts, at least something of note. Okay. Now, if nobody had heard of Lucy, no, I wouldn't have. So
that's where the historical research comes in.
Exactly. So,
and then getting back to the tagging of evidence when you're doing EVP sessions. What about, because I've experienced this on several investigations, if you, like, say you got touched, do you announce to the group, "I just got touched," like you're tagging the EVP? Because I've seen it so many times where it's like, "I just got touched on my hand," and then a few seconds later, "I just got touched on my hand," or it's all of a sudden someone 10 feet away is experiencing the exact same thing that the first person who announced it did.
Our protocol is, if you get touched, you get your hair pulled, you hear something whisper in your ear, you are to go to, and I usually break up into squads. You go to your squad leader and you say, "Something happened." That person's immediately removed from the scene, and myself and the squad leader will then find out what happened. They're not allowed to blurt out, and it happened because of an incident. That's why we changed and made this protocol. Happened during investigation. So now you have to quietly say something to your squad leader. and then myself, who's usually at the base, will interview them, find out what they had, and put them back in if they're feeling up to it. But they're not allowed to say anything out loud. Now, that doesn't mean somebody doesn't get startled, and
Yeah.
I mean, that does happen. But the protocol is, you're supposed to keep it quiet, at least with us.
That's an excellent protocol. That's excellent. We're going to have to institute that. We have similar for the psychics, but we need to do that for everyone.
Fortunately, mine's I've got a very small group that I'm working with right now. So we're usually all together, which is good. And to your point, it's no different than if somebody, like if my psychic, she's most likely to go ahead and be attacked if anybody, however you want to put it, have some type of outcome. But she's got to a point now where, the camera's there. She knows not to put her hands up or do anything or touch anything, just to go, hey, just got, it happened, whatever, because we only have 3 or 4. But you're right.
Yeah.
It could create hysteria if you go from any farther. But I want to have, because I'm looking for I want to document. I want to have a camera come up. I want to sit there, because it can take 5 minutes. It could be 20 minutes before you see any type of marks. But if nobody puts any hands on there and you can watch it live, how do you debunk that? That's what I'm looking for. But I do like your protocol. I wouldn't want to, everybody, it's like information about a location. When I have multiple groups out, I'll do the same thing. I'm the one that knows more of the key details about the entire location. No different than if my medium gets there, she'll walk the location, but I'll know about it. Nobody else will, what she's getting.
Well, I think if somebody was to get scratched too, they're not going to be able to hold it in and go. Right. They're gonna go, ouch! What was that? And you're hopefully getting that on camera. And I mean, there's certain things you're not going to be able to control, but whenever possible is when we do it.
Yeah. No, I like
For
it.
us, our main concern is minimizing fear, minimizing the terror that these clients are feeling. So we are very careful about what we share with them, the information, our feelings especially, but also anything we experience. Because we're never going to use the word demon unless there's full-blown possession, which is very, very, very rare. We're not going to go in there and announce, yes, you've got a demon. We're going to investigate. We're going to get to the bottom of it as hard as we can and do everything we can to make that family feel more secure first, because that's a big tool in helping them to overcome the problems.
Do you typically keep the family there, Chris, at the location?
Yes.
Because I see so often where people, especially TV shows or anything else, not just TV shows, but where the teams, they want the family to go out of there, but that family is the one who has to live in that location.
Yeah.
And again, they can see just how you react. I'm sorry, and it's going to sound really weird, and I've seen some crazy stuff happen, and my medium be the first one to tell you that she despises it, but I'm laughing all the time. I'm taking it serious. I'm letting the client understand it's serious, but I'm not going to put it out to that point to cause that fear. I mean, my medium can, she'll be seeing something, and to her, she's seeing it in real time. To me, I can't see it, so it's not obviously going to have that impression on me.
Right.
But being able to, I just see people, to your point, as far as playing evidence. I went to a location several states away. I get out there, and the person who I'm out there with, the investigator, he's playing a clip where he's screaming some obscenity, and it's like, cut that off. Why are you, and the clients are right there. Why are you playing? Why would you play that to create the fear for the client? To your point, again, why? You just planted a seed that's a lot harder to take back.
Amen.
Mm-hmm. And see, you two, once again, are kind of a little bit different than my group. You're in homes with people, and we've done that. Don't misunderstand me, but a lot of our work is research, and we'll go back to venues 3 and 4 times, buildings, the government buildings, to collect data. Whereas you guys tend to, it appears, to do more work with folks in their homes. So I think that's a little bit difference between what we do and what you guys do, but it does add a different dynamic. So we don't have those same kind of issues, but we'll go back to venues 3 and 4 times, because I'm a firm believer you're not going to get all the data the first time.
No.
Right.
So we'll go back sometimes 3 and 4 times to these buildings. So that's just a little bit different situation from mine with you guys.
Yeah, it is definitely a different situation, and it's no disrespect to either one. But when you're dealing with a family and we're trying to get results,
Mm-hmm.
On a different level than. And again, going back to that documentation, as Chris said, he wants to get the results to go ahead and help. Same here, help that family get back to their norm rather than worried about, hey, did I catch that particular EVP at that time?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even have a good name for what I would call myself. I don't think of myself as a researcher exactly. If
No,
anything,
you got.
I guess a paranormal social worker.
Yeah,
I
I see, and I see that's what you're doing. My group, I can say honestly, our goal is to collect data to find answers. Not that you're not, and not that we don't go into homes and help folks on occasion, but that's your primary job. It's just a different way of doing it. That's all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're coming at it from a totally different angle. There's nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly valid. It's just with my background in social services my whole life, it's where I gravitate.
And being a cop, I gravitate to the investigation to solve the crime, so to speak. So it's
And that's why they call it parapsychology.
I'm going after the victim.
Yeah. But it's like I was asked yesterday on another show that I was on, and that's why they call it parapsychology, because we're there to help anyone who needs help, whether it's living or someone on the other side.
Mm-hmm. And I don't care if it's paranormal. Mm-hmm. If you come to me and you think it's paranormal, that's all I care about. I'm happy to help you. We're going to figure out what your actual issue is, and then see if we can hook you up with those services. Mm-hmm. And 9 times out of 10, it's not paranormal.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm surprised it's kind of quiet in the comments. If you guys have any questions, make sure to ask. We have about 10 minutes before we need to start wrapping everything up. So I'm trying to think I ran out of all questions too.
What's the craziest between Chris and Larry? Larry, what's the craziest, because you guys are doing your research, what's the craziest kind of, if you don't mind me asking, Heather, what's the craziest event or anything you've witnessed that was unexplainable? Do you have anything offhand that hits? Or just something?
Yeah, I got something I'm actually kind of charged up about, and I can't go into a ton of detail because we're actually investigating it. We were asked to come into a building, a business. It was odd because my daughter, who's a police officer in this town, responded to a call for a burglar alarm, and one thing led to another, and they mentioned that they had issues going on there, and hey, my dad might be interested in helping you out. And we went to do the investigation. And to so I don't bore you too long with the story, but I think you'll find it interesting, is kind of quiet at first, not a whole lot happening, but then suddenly Chris is there in England, talking through the headphones, mentions some names. I've got somebody using dowsing rods and somebody doing a spirit box Estes methods with the earphones on so they can't hear it. Chris gives me a name. Nobody can hear it but me. The spirit box comes up with the name. Same name. Okay. All right, fine. Pretty cool. We start talking. To make a long story short, we come up with what we believe to be a 5-year-old girl that died there. Died under, shall we say, circumstances that were very suspicious. So I asked her little things like, so do you like to watch TV? No. Do you like to listen to radio? Yes. Do you like to listen to this show? No. Did you like the show? And I used Amos and Andy. And we got a yes. So now I know it's probably the 30s and 40s, right? This house is that old. Get a name, Melinda, Belinda. Or no, I'm sorry, Lindy or Belinda. Okay, great. Well, we ended the investigation, and I'm really leaving out a lot of details, but I need to at this point. But it was pretty fascinating, pretty solid stuff we were getting. And we were getting it through 3 different sources: earphones with Chris, my friend in England, spirit box, and dowsing rods. So I sent my daughter on a mission, find me some information that happened in that area. And within about a week, we got information back that a family had come to this local cemetery, and they had a young relative that died in the year 1939 under mysterious circumstances. her grave is almost completely unmarked, very poor. It's got a gravestone about that big. You can't even get the name off of it. But she was 5 years old. Her name was Belinda, and she died in 1939 of mysterious circumstances.
Wow.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've got information I got in a paranormal investigation, and I got a grave with that child in it. That's got my blood going right now, let me tell you, because I and there's a lot more to it, but in recent times, that's probably the most exciting thing that we've had happen, because we've been able to corroborate everything. So we're pretty excited about that, and we're conducting an investigation now. So that's, to answer your question, that's the one that's got me going right now.
That is really cool. You know,
Yeah.
again, the confirmations, you bringing it, it all come together. That's wow.
Yeah, and we may be able to put together a crime that's never been solved.
That's awesome.
So
We actually have a team in South Carolina working on similar murder.
Yeah.
I should have them talk to you, actually.
Love to chat with them. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. The one that comes to mind that blows my mind, and I've had lots of experiences. One night, 2:00 in the morning, I'm sleeping in my recliner. I wake up, turn on the computer, don't know why, and immediately there is an exorcist I work with in Argentina begging me for help. It's a woman. And she said that a spirit had just walked into her house in Argentina and had said something in a language she did not recognize. And then she started speaking and showing images to my friend, the exorcist. She said that at first, when this figure came in the room, she was completely white, long flowing gowns, robes, bare feet, and long black hair. As she became more solid, she became brown. And I had a feeling I knew who this was. And I said, she's going to come back. You need to make sure you record this the next time she's with you. And she said, I'm terrified. My friend said, I'm terrified. And I said, it's okay. You're in no danger. And the spirit said, we know Chris. He can't help you. I'm like, yeah, I didn't want that. The next afternoon, she remembered that initial phrase that the spirit had said, and she repeated it to me. I had lived in the Middle East, so I recognized that it was Arabic. And I contacted someone I know in Lebanon, and she translated it to me. And the message was, my servants, I have a plan. And then she started showing those images of destruction and turmoil and people dying to my friend. So my friend then went home, got out her old cassette recorder, and pressed record for 24 seconds. When she replayed it, and this is the most amazing EVP I've ever heard in my entire life, you hear two voices completely clearly chanting something in Arabic. Now, this woman doesn't speak English. This woman only speaks Spanish. She doesn't know Arabic from anything. I recognized it. Again, I turned it over to my friend, and my friend translated it, and it's all except the first line of the Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Wow.
In Arabic.
Wow.
Wow.
I believe, and I'm not even a Christian, I believe it was Mary, Mother Mary. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I really do. So that would be the most overwhelmingly positive experience I've had in the paranormal.
That is amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah.
And she did come back. She came back as this like blue flame circling around the room and talking to my friend. I couldn't hear anything, but I saw the flame.
Well, again, having the network of being able to reach out to somebody, because you've got a different language that somebody could go ahead and translate well enough that you can trust to get back, to definitely, again, networking.
Yeah. Well, that's why my grandmother and I created this, was to be able to call on that experience all around the world.
Wow. And what about you, Robert?
Mine are, I deal with a lot of negative cases, and it's some really bizarre, but I had one woman, and I'll just go a little bit quick. I mean, it's so unrealistic. I mean, you don't think of things moving inside the human body besides what we see on us like it is, but when you have something that actually changes, the ironic part is because, of course, now we can do this FaceTime, you can actually be talking to somebody. Well, I'll throw in something in Latin, talking about evil, and her eyes would just get really big. They'd tear immediately, and she'd pass out. 3 different times this happened. I'm like, okay, that's weird. Normally people will be, excuse me, would you say? But each time it would happen the same way. So I'm like, okay, there's something a little bit bizarre. The thing in her chest itself, she kept talking about her stomach being tight and everything. Well, if something were to actually physically move in your chest, how? So that got my attention.
Yeah.
Again, I love this stuff. End up driving down, go to meet her, take my stuff with me. I'm going to go ahead and take care of this point. But when I get ready, I have a crucifix that I always put in my back pocket. And when I put my shirt over it, you can't see it. I mean, it's probably about an 8-inch crucifix or anything. When I'm working with somebody, I'm always working from their backside. If they have a particular issue, something extremely negative, if it's inside of them, they're seeing through their eyes. I'm coming to the backside because now it's a weakness. But I noticed every time I put my hand, she did not see me. No way. But every time I put my hand with that crucifix, using my kimono as a crucifix, and I would touch her on the shoulder with my hand, she would give this ungodly scream. And at first it was like a shock, and then it kind of got to be fun because it's like, let's test this again. So every time I would touch her, but I thought, because of where I was at, because I asked the woman to go ahead and pick out a location. I said, not a school. I need to do it in this type of scenario. Well, she picked out a school, so I had to try to find a location. Well, it was a small strip of woods. I went ahead and did a little area. To me, this is what I do. I set up a particular area and get it ready. I go ahead and take care of the person. I was doing this, and when she's letting out this crazy scream, the only time I've ever been scared is I was scared that I had these little red dots on me. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm in the woods. The woman is screaming. And I thought a cop is going to turn around and shoot me. I'm like turning around going, oh my God.
That's what I was thinking.
I was thinking somebody's going to turn around because the amount of screaming she would do if you touched her, it was amazing.
Wow.
I mean, there's a lot of, but to me, that's cool. You can't forget something like that once it happens.
Yeah, we've used that technique many, many times.
Yeah. And again, to me, it was learned. So, it'd been nice to be around somebody that's willing to share, to go ahead and say, hey, here's another way of, but some areas, a lot of information is closed.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll get there.
We will
eventually.
eventually.
I'm changing that. That's the whole point of all of the videos that Heather does. Good Lord knows there's
well done,
body
Miss
of
Heather.
information available to the world because of her efforts. It's pretty fantastic.
We appreciate that very much.
I'm trying. Little by little, we're getting there. But thank you guys for joining me. This has been a great conversation. Hopefully we can do this again. I know I'll definitely, Chris had mentioned working with you guys in the future, so I'll definitely keep in touch and maybe come up with something. Good. I know I need to get to Vero Beach and see you, Larry. I've been there a couple of times. I just haven't had time to see you when I'm there.
Well, next time you're here, make sure you do.
Okay. I know it'll be later this month because I'm coming for my mom's birthday for a few days.
Oh, okay.
So
it was a pleasure meeting both of you gentlemen. You seem like terrific guys. And I'd love to get to talk to you guys more. And Heather, thank you very much for
no problem
having me on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for spending all that evening with me.
Nice meeting everybody.
You know that.
For those of you guys watching, you can also watch the replay on Ghost Education 101 on Facebook. And then join us for our next show on April 27th at 9 p.m. Eastern. I will be joined by the Haunted Librarian for a presentation on New Orleans ghosts, vampires, and urban legends.
Ooh, have to watch that.
And she's amazing. She did one a couple weeks ago on unsolved murder cases. And
Cool.
so
Nice.
she does some great presentations, and she thoroughly does her research, which is why I like having her on the show.
Well, I think those are the shows I should be watching, not these ones with that Chris guy. He's kidding me.
Yeah, you know, you don't want to watch the Warren Files. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, bloody hell no. They're boring as hell. That big guy never shuts up.
I know. It's like I hosted the last show. I might have talked 5 minutes through the whole thing.
I watched you be quiet through the whole thing. I was like, what's going on? Talk. Direct us.
Well, thank you again. And everyone
you.
have a great night, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank
Take
you.
care, guys. Bye-bye now. Bye.